Come see us doing live shows. We'll be in Los Angeles, Honolulu, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only jimmydore.com.
Again, this whole notion that those of us who are condemning this war are agents of the Russian government, again, is very personal to me, because last year I went to Crimea in Moscow for the first time to try to do whatever I could, however small a contribution it might be, to establish a dialogue with the Russian people. And I got a call when I was in Crimea from a guy named Adam Zivo, who was a columnist for the flagship newspaper of Canada's largest newspaper publisher. It's called the National Post. And he was stationed in Ukraine on the side controlled by Ukraine at the time that he reached out to me. And he said he wanted to interview me. And I knew from prior experience that the National Post was likely to be preparing to do a hit job on me. So I said to the guy, because I've kind of been at war with them for some time. And I said to the guy, I will do the interview on one condition, and that is you allow me to record the conversation and publish the whole thing, which he assented to. And in the article, which they put on the front page of the National Post on a Monday morning, he effectively accused me of being a Putin apologist and an agent of the Kremlin. So later this year, or about 3 months ago, the same guy, Adam Zivo, revealed that at the time that he interviewed me, he was a spy for the Ukrainian and Canadian intelligence agencies. And that his employer knew it. And there have been absolutely no consequences for him, as far as I can tell. He continues to be a columnist for the National Post. He's not been reprimanded or punished in any way. So this guy, the guy who accused me, when I wasn't paid a dime to go to Russia, no one compensated me for my travel expenses. The guy who accused me publicly in a national newspaper of being a Putin apologist and an agent of the Russian government was himself an agent of the Ukrainian and Canadian intelligence services at the time he interviewed me. That's how pathetic the public discourse in this country has become around, NATO's proxy wars and our government's utterly depraved foreign policy.
Well, it's good to see some people are waking up. And here's a great example of what we were just talking about. So this is from November 25th, the Daily Mail. So there's a woman who performed a Nazi salute at that protest. Turns out she's Jewish, and she's the owner of two kosher cafes inside a Jewish hospital. So why would she be? So she's wearing a Palestinian, what do they call those?
Kaffieh.
Kaffieh. Yeah, so she's wearing that, and she's doing a Nazi salute, and she's doing that to discredit the protesters who are protesting against NATO's involvement in Israel and the support for the genocide that's happening right now in Palestine. So she's doing that. That's exactly the same thing they did to the truckers. They had that's called an agent provocateur, someone that's in there to pretend and make you hate the protesters when that's actually someone who's on the side of Israel and the genocide, who's trying to make the protesters look bad. There it is. It's in the frickin' Daily Mail. So be aware of that when you see that kind of stuff. That's what's actually happening. Anything you'd like to add to this story?
Yeah, look, if you want to talk about Nazi sympathies, you don't have to go very far in Canada to find them. They're in the center of power. Our government, virtually every member of parliament in Canada gave a standing ovation, two standing ovations last year to a known Nazi. It was a matter of public record that this man, Jaroslav Hunka, fought for the Waffen-SS during the Second World War. Our government was discovered by a well-known newspaper to be training the Azov Battalion in the lead up to the Ukraine war and in the early days of the Ukraine war. Knowingly, they were giving military training to the Azov Battalion. Our government has repeatedly voted against UN General Assembly resolutions condemning the glorification of Nazism. This is the Trudeau government, the so-called progressive government. And our government just decided, Jimmy, after they gave these two standing ovations, it reopened these old wounds about Nazis coming to Canada after the Second World War. Hundreds and hundreds of them came with the knowledge of the Canadian government, and it was all covered up. So as a result of this international scandal in Canada's parliament, we had another debate about whether we should open up the government archives about these Nazis who came to Canada, and the government decided not to release their names, even though many of them are dead. So, I mean, who is the Nazi sympathizer here? Is it the people who are, going out in the streets and taking the risk of having their heads bashed in by overzealous cops when protesting against a genocide? Or is it the government? I think that's the question people in Canada should be asking themselves.
I agree. I have my fingers crossed and my prayers to God that the left finds its mind again and wakes up to the fact that it's funny that Trudeau actually blamed when it got revealed and they couldn't deny it anymore that they were saluting a Nazi, legit Nazi inside the Canadian Parliament. He blamed it on Russian disinformation. It was kind of amazing.
A friend of mine who's an academic went to the Valdai conference after that, the very important conference in Russia in Moscow, and had an opportunity to ask Putin about the standing ovations in Canada's parliament in the Q&A. And Putin, responded, as you could imagine, in a very harsh way. When she came back from Moscow, she was detained at the airport in Toronto and interrogated for 2 hours by the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, which is our equivalent of the CIA, just because she asked Putin for his reaction to Canada's parliament giving standing ovations to a Nazi. I would say to our friends out there who aren't in Canada, don't know much about Canada, if you think Canada is a bastion of progressivism, well, there are many progressives here, but certainly our government is the antithesis of progressivism.
Yes, they're authoritarians, they're dictatorial, they're anti-freedom, they're anti-free speech. And they're all about controlling you for the military-industrial complex. That's what it's about, and it's right. It's about they know the words, just as Chris Hedges said it in his book. They know the words of democracy. They pay fealty to freedom, liberty, but they don't practice it. They practice the exact opposite. So,
100%.
Well. Listen, Dimitri, I really appreciate you making time for us today. Thanks for coming on and commenting on us. Everybody can check. Where should people check you out at? Your YouTube, Joe?
I have a YouTube channel. It's called Reason to Resist with the number 2. And I also am very active on X at Dimitri Lascaris. Okay. And thanks very much for having me on, Jimmy.
I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for your commentary. Thanks for your work. And we'd love to have you on again. Talk about those secret resorts that they have. Israel has these secret resorts in Cyprus, which is a fascinating story. I can't wait to have you back on. We can talk about that.
Be happy to do it. Thank you.
Come see us doing live shows. We'll be in Los Angeles, Honolulu, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only jimmydore.com.